Joining me now from Sydney, Australia, journalist Antony Loewenstein, long-time regional analyst and author of the Palestine Laboratory. Always good to see you, Antony. A former senior Israeli military official told CNN when it comes to Israel, quote, "Are you responding to intention or to results?" Now, when we look at Israel's declared policy of so-called escalation to de-escalate in Lebanon and what it might do now in Iran, what do you think Israel's broader intentions are?
I mean, first of all, it's worth saying that escalation through de-escalation, or even it's the other way around, is just an absurd Orwellian term that means nothing. I mean, anyone who's watched the news in the last year has seen that we've seen massive escalation from Gaza to the West Bank, from Yemen to Syria. Look, Israel's, I think, long-term goal here, and it's been articulated by Netanyahu and many of his government members, and also, frankly, many in Israel itself, is, I would argue, to expand Israeli borders. This was the case before October 7, but Israel sees a unique once-in-a-generation opportunity to expand their borders. What do I mean by that? The possibility of, say, even occupying parts of southern Lebanon. Obviously, Gaza is now decimated. There's a talk about potentially permanently occupying at least the northern part of Gaza. The West Bank is occupied, has been for over half a century, and that occupation is deepening. And the delusion, of course, about that policy is that a belief that you can militarily dominate, kill, assassinate, imprison your enemies, perceived enemies. But none of it is bringing Israel long-term security, let alone Jews around the world such as myself. None of it is. In fact, it's the opposite, that it's enraging huge amounts of people globally. And the evidence of that is overwhelming in terms of people who are protesting on the streets. You can kill leaders, Mike, or you can kill Hezbollah leaders, Hamas leaders. Israel's been here before. And the end result was, in fact, growing opposition to their policies, not less.
Yeah. I want to ask you about this too. Israel is bombing Beirut, and of course there's been almost total destruction of Gaza, 1,400 dead in Lebanon. The last couple of weeks, thousands wounded. Israeli boots have been on Lebanese soil, and yet there was US and Western outrage that Israel came under Iranian missile attacks. Some say there's a double standard depending on who's bombing what. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, double standard is a polite way to put it. It's hypocrisy. And a lot of people see that the idea somehow that Israelis are under attack, but you never see that similar language used about Gazans under attack, or people in the West Bank, or for that matter, Lebanese, Yemenis, Syrians. We have a when I say we, many in the West have a real hypocrisy and, frankly, racism when we talk about different people. We in the West deserve safety, security. If you're Jewish, if you're Israeli, you deserve security. If you're Arab, Palestinian, Muslim, somehow implied maybe you're suspicious. The language that's often been used by so many Western media outlets in the last year, not all, but many, really shows that. The language when we talk about Russian attacks on Ukraine, very clear. Russia's attacking civilians, it's indefensible, which it is. But when we talk about Israel attacking civilians, which has been the vast bulk of the war in the last year in a multitude of theatres, the language somehow is couched in vagueness, or we don't mention who the main perpetrator is. That, I think, goes to the heart of so much of the hypocrisy that people see, which is why, by the way, so much the audience of Western press in the last years is declining.
Yeah. When you look at Israel's rejections of ceasefires in Gaza, the attack on Hezbollah's leader, after the Biden administration said a ceasefire is close and Israel was in on those talks, keeping the US in the dark on things like pager explosions, do you get a sense from Israel's actions that they have, slipped from the sphere of influence from Washington, that Benjamin Netanyahu was on a mission of sorts and won't be stopped?
I mean, to some extent, Netanyahu is on a mission, but I don't accept the idea that America somehow is blind to this. I mean, we constantly read in the last year, regularly in the press, Biden's concerned, Biden is upset, Kamala Harris is worried. She's expressed sympathy for Palestinians. What matters in the end are policies. And what matters is that Israel is still being sent massive amounts of weapons from the US. None of that has changed. We've read in the last week the US administration's been happy with Israel's escalation in Lebanon. In the end, what matters are actions. And Biden's legacy is pretty clear. He'll be leaving office in a few months and is essentially given carte blanche and support and arms to the most significant attack and death toll of Palestinians in their history. Far more than 1948 in the Nakba, where there were roughly 15, 20,000 Palestinians killed in that war that Israel, for its establishment. There's been 40, 50, 60,000 Palestinians dead. That is Biden's legacy. And all the talk about his concern, it means nothing because facts on the ground speak for themselves.